Hey everybody, it's Dr. Leslie here again. Today we're going to be talking about all of those things that you've heard probably from like your mom, from your family, that they think helps start labor naturally at home. Now, I know every single family and every single person has heard of a lot of different things that they can do to try to get labor started when they're at home. But there are a lot that don't work and have been studied multiple times and really don't have a lot of evidence that they do anything. So I want to let you know what those are. What are the ones that aren't really going to do much for you if you're pregnant and you're trying to go into labor? And then there'll be a part 2 of this video that tells you what are the actual at-home things that you can do that help start labor or help reduce the rate of needing to get induced in the hospital with medication, and what are those things that actually have evidence behind them supporting them. So it's going to be a great 2-part series. I'm excited. Just to introduce myself, again, my name is Dr. Leslie. I'm a board-certified family medicine physician. I'm a primary care doctor for people from babies to elderly folks in the clinic, and then I also work on labor and delivery, working with pregnant people and helping with their deliveries. I was recently just pregnant, and so just went through this whole experience myself. So I have a little bit of knowledge about this from a professional standpoint and from a personal standpoint now. So let's get talking about some of these things. Before we get started, I just want to talk quickly about personal situations and stories that people have heard. Like everyone's gonna have heard, a sister or a friend say, oh, I tried this, or I tried castor oil, or I tried eating pineapple and it worked for me, right? And I want to talk a little bit about that because while everybody has their own personal experience, all of what I'm going to be talking about today have been researched, and there have been studies that have been put out saying if you were to try these things, there would be no difference in when you go into labor compared to if you were just to not try them at all, right? And leave it up to chance or the fact that you're 39 weeks pregnant anyway, and so there's a decent chance you could go into labor in the next 3 or 4 days, regardless if you tried the castor oil or not. Does that make sense? So I don't want to discount people's, specific experiences, but compared to chance and just being, full term and pregnant, trying these things didn't increase the likelihood that you would go into labor compared to if you didn't try them at all. So let's talk about some of these different methods to induce labor at home that really don't do a whole lot. The first couple are foods that you eat. I know a ton of people say if you try spicy foods, you're going to go into labor. Now, there have been studies looking into spicy foods, and there's not a lot of research on it, but there has been no connection found between when people go into labor and if that happens sooner if they eat spicy food. The next one is pineapple. I know this is a really common one. If you eat pineapple, it'll cause you to trigger you to go into labor. So try that. And unfortunately, there haven't been any studies done showing that if you eat pineapple, it's going to cause you to go into labor. So there has been a study out there that's like isolated uterine tissue in a petri dish, and then they put pineapple on it and potentially see some uterine tissue stimulation from that, but like that's very different than like just a person eating pineapple. So no, we don't have any significant evidence saying that pineapple or spicy foods help. Now, these are pretty like benign things. I ate spicy food throughout my pregnancy as I could tolerate it because I had heartburn. Obviously, I think a lot of people do, but I still ate spicy food. And then I ate pineapple too. So like, it's totally fine. Eat those things. It's not a big deal. You could try it if you wanted because there's not a huge harm, right? The next one is castor oil. I know this is a super popular one. People hear about this either taking it like alone or mixing it into some sort of drink. And castor oil, consuming a lot of castor oil will give you really probably bad diarrhea, but it's not going to induce you for labor. There was a 2013 study that pretty much confirmed this. Yeah, lots of gastrointestinal side effects. So that sounds horribly unpleasant while you're pregnant. But no, the castor oil won't kick you into labor, unfortunately. So now let's talk about acupuncture. This is another one I think that a lot of people try. Again, acupuncture for the most part, of course, talk with your doctor or your midwife to see if that's safe for you in your pregnancy. But it's really has more minimal harms. It's pretty safe. But this is something that a lot of people will try to see if it will induce labor. And there's overall, there was a big study that reviewed all of the different studies on acupuncture for induction of labor, and it showed that there is no significant data saying that it induced labor, it made labor times shorter, reduced the need for medications in the hospital for labor induction, that kind of thing. There was one study specifically that said that maybe, possibly, and this study, I think the data wasn't really strong data, but that possibly the cervix was a bit more ripe, as we say, so maybe a little bit more prepared for labor in people who got acupuncture done. But again, when you look at the sum of all the studies, there isn't strong evidence supporting that it is helpful. Now, the final one is a doozy. This one, I think so many people try, but it is something that a lot of people think that this is gonna get me into labor. This is what everybody says, and even medical professionals I've heard recommend it too, which is intercourse. So a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, I'm past my due date. Let's have sex and see if we go into labor." Now, the logic behind this is good. There are a lot of prostaglandins in semen, which prostaglandins help not only prepare the cervix for labor, but can help with contractions as well. And so the thought is that the semen can help induce labor. That is my dog deciding that he's going to roll around on the carpet right during this conversation. Thank you. Great. Anyway, so the logic behind it is good, right? You're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then in 2019, they did a meta-analysis, which is a review of all the different studies out there on this, and they found that there's no significant data overall when you take all the studies and put them together, suggesting that having sex can cause people to go into labor. Again, you will hear people say, well, we had sex and then I went into labor 2 days later. Well, if you're 40 weeks pregnant and you're 2 days past your due date, there's a high likelihood you're going to go into labor anyway, right? So it's just compared to if you were to go into labor on your own without doing these things, the rates wouldn't be any different if you did try them. And so as far as having sex in pregnancy, again, you want to talk with your provider, your doctor, or your certified nurse midwife about this, because while it is safe and healthy for the vast majority of people, there are some certain high-risk conditions in pregnancy, like placenta previa, where you would not want to be having sex because it is a risk. So talk with your provider about that. All right. Well, to sum things up, unfortunately, a lot of these different things that people have heard that can or have been told can induce labor, right? Like eating spicy food, eating pineapple, castor oil, acupuncture, sex, all of those things, unfortunately, have not been shown to have significant data saying that they help you go into labor faster or can induce you naturally, kind of at home, right? So sad days, I know, but don't worry, because in the next video that I will be putting out next week, we will discuss 3 things that you can do outside of the hospital that have some evidence behind them to help people either go into labor a little bit faster or not need to be in the hospital getting induced for labor with medication. So avoiding that. So stay tuned for my next video and we'll talk about some of those things next week. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.